Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to our channel, AI Era Islamic Abrahamic Wisdom. Today we're embarking on a really crucial exploration drawn directly from the sources you shared with us. We're focusing on Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir's authoritative work, The Foundation of Islamic Jurisprudence. Specifically, we're in Volume 1, Subvolume 3, analyzing the governing decisions of Hazrat Umar bin al-Khattab.
And we're zooming in on Case 14, which is just a fascinating piece of constitutional architecture, the establishment of the judicial salary independence system.
Exactly. Now, before we jump in, please do subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also share this with your friends. It really does help us bring more of this deep analysis to you. Okay, so let's unpack this. When people talk about judicial independence today, they usually talk about court structure, procedure, that kind of thing. But this deep dive takes us right back to the source code of governance. We're looking at how a foundational legal system recognized that, well, true independence isn't just a philosophical idea, it's an economic reality.
That's what's so fascinating here, the way the source material frames it. We're not talking about, simple administrative payroll or some line item in a budget. We are examining the practical steps, the engineering that went into building a justice system that is structurally, from the ground up, designed to be uncorruptible by financial pressure.
It's constitutional engineering, as you said. The judge's salary is framed as the very armor of justice.
Precisely.
So the mission of this deep dive, really, is to explore this concept that judicial independence isn't secured by just personal morality or by taking an oath.
Yeah.
The source material argues it's secured fundamentally by economic insulation. We have to look past the moral argument and really analyze the practical architecture.
Indeed. And it treats the judicial salary not as a government expense to be, minimized, but as a constitutional safeguard. It's an essential investment. It's what's required to protect the judge from external political pressure and also from their own internal financial anxiety. The core insight is just powerfully simple.
Right.
If you systematically remove a judge's need for outside income or favor, you simultaneously remove the leverage that anyone has to influence them.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because we often simplify corruption. We think of it as, greed or just a moral failing of that one person.
Yeah, and the bad apple theory.
Exactly. But the source material argues that corruption often starts with structural dependency. If the system itself creates a financial weakness, it's basically inviting compromise.
It is. So we have to look at the exact constitutional architecture that was required to fight this structural weakness head on.
Let's start right there with what the sources call the constitutional problem. And it's a brutal thesis that was recognized very early on. A hungry judge is not an independent judge. That quote seems harsh, but it's fundamentally realistic, isn't it?
It's pure realism applied to governance. And that realization is so profound because it acknowledges human nature. It acknowledges the inevitable reality of systemic pressure. You can appoint the most pious, the most educated, the most ethically committed person you can find. But if their livelihood is precarious, that piety is constantly under existential stress.
So it's not that integrity is unimportant.
Not at all. The thesis isn't that moral integrity doesn't matter. It's that morality alone can't reliably resist every pressure when a judge's family, their survival is on the line. The structure has to fortify the morality.
Okay, so before this reform, what was the typical situation that made the judiciary so vulnerable? The sources outline a few really debilitating scenarios.
Well, historically and, tragically in many places today still, judges faced immense financial stress. Many had to rely on their own personal wealth just to maintain the status their office required.
And if they didn't have that personal wealth,
then they were often forced into accepting income from sources that immediately created conflicts. They might accept gifts, labeled out of respect or hospitality.
Yeah.
And these things, they subtly, insidiously build a relationship of obligation that compromises future impartiality.
And crucially, their financial well-being often depended on the very regional authorities they were supposed to be holding accountable, right?
That's the biggest one. Their housing, their stipend, even their continued employment could be subject to the whim of the local governor. And that instantly sets up this profound structural conflict of interest, especially when that governor is a party in a case or has strong political or economic interests in the outcome.
Right.
And let's not forget trade. If a judge couldn't rely on wealth or gifts, they had to earn a living through a side business while holding office.
Which splits their focus completely.
It splits their focus, and worse, it creates 1,000 possibilities for ethical compromise. Business partners or customers might end up appearing before their court.
So Umar, all right, looked at all this, the reliance on wealth, the side hustles, the vulnerability to local power, and identified 4 specific structural flaws. Let's call them the 4 constitutional dangers.
Yes, and we should really delve into these because they're so insightful. Let's start with the first one, which is arguably the hardest to police: hidden bribery.
Hidden bribery. It's dangerous because it wears the mask of kindness. The source material says gifts become silent influence, an investment.
It's an investment. That's the perfect word. If a powerful merchant sends the judge's family a rare and expensive gift, or maybe quietly sponsors his child's education, that's rarely pure generosity. You're planting a future debt, a soft liability, or at the very least, you're establishing a relationship of familiarity and obligation.
And the insidious part is that the judge might not even consciously realize they've been bribed.
Exactly. But when that kind patron later stands before the court, the internal psychological pressure to not offend them or to view their case with a little extra sympathy, it's immense. It's not outright corruption, it's the corruption of perspective.
And that weakness leads directly to the second, and maybe the most crippling danger for the state: executive leverage. This is where the separation of powers just completely breaks down.
It becomes an illusion. If the judge's salary, their housing, their resources, or their job itself depends on the local governor's approval, that judge loses all ability to rule impartially against that governor or their powerful allies.
Can you give us an example?
Well, imagine a judge in a volatile border region. If the governor can just decide to withhold supplies or move the judge to a less desirable post, or even just delay payment until the judge rules favorably in, say, a land dispute involving the governor's family.
Then the governor effectively controls the judge's survival.
Correct. So judicial independence becomes a meaningless phrase on paper. The lack of financial insulation transfers all the real power to the executive.
The third danger is what the source calls selective courage. This seems to get the psychological toll.
It's about the unequal application of the law. A judge who is financially stressed, maybe they've taken out loans or they rely on social connections for extra income, they will inevitably exercise caution. They will fear ruling against powerful, well-connected interests, wealthy financiers, tribal elders, political allies of the central administration. The personal risk is simply too high.
So when the choice is between upholding a difficult truth that angers the elite versus a safe, maybe biased judgment that keeps their family fed.
Human nature often bends towards self-preservation, and that is the death of structural equity. Justice becomes selective. It only applies to those who can't push back financially or socially.
And finally, the fourth danger, which damages the whole system, even if not a single judge, is actually corrupt.
Public distrust.
And this is maybe the most crucial constitutional asset you have to protect. Even if a judge is personally impeccable, if the system allows for the perception that judgments could be bought,
the court's authority just crumbles. It crumbles. The sources emphasize that justice must not only be done, but it must unequivocally appear to be done. When the public loses faith in the courts, they look for other ways to resolve disputes. That leads to fragmentation, vigilantism, a total disregard for the rule of law.
So the stakes are just enormous.
Yeah.
This frames the salary system not as some administrative detail, but as an essential defense mechanism for the state itself.
Exactly. The cost of underpaying judges is the collapse of justice.
Okay, so having established that vulnerability, let's move to the solution. This is the principle that really forms the cornerstone of judicial independence.
Right, and it's a radical solution.
This is the revolutionary principle. A judge must be paid enough, never need anyone. It sounds simple, but the implementation turned it into constitutional engineering.
It was absolutely constitutional engineering, not just generosity. This principle flips the entire paradigm. Instead of relying on the judge's personal internal virtue, which we've established is fragile, the state creates structural immunity.
You remove the need as a factor.
You remove it entirely. If the judge is sufficiently provided for, if his family is secure, he has no legitimate financial reason to accept a bribe, seek a side hustle, or fear the local governor.
So that secure income gives a judge the institutional courage to say no.
No to the governor, no to the wealthy elites, no to tribal pressure. The financial stability itself becomes the foundation of their courage.
To make this real, Umar, R.A., established 4 critical institutional pillars. These weren't temporary fixes, were they?
Not at all. They permanently redefine the structural relationship between the judiciary and the central state treasury.
Let's break those down. The first, and maybe most critical, is high fixed salaries.
Yes, and the word high here is so important. The salary had to be substantial and reliably fixed. It wasn't a minimum survival wage. We see evidence that judges in major centers like Kufa or Basra received salaries that were comparable to, and sometimes even exceeded, the stipends of senior military commanders or regional governors.
Wow, that is a telling comparison. Paying the judiciary on par with the executive and military sends a very clear signal about where the rule of law stands.
It signals that the rule of law is the highest value institution in the state. The compensation was substantial, often paid in dirhams, or a mix of cash and rations. We're talking maybe 500 dirhams a month, at a time when a soldier's annual pay might be far, far lower.
And this served two purposes.
Two immediate purposes. First, attract the absolute best legal and moral minds to the bench. And second, provide instant, complete insulation from financial temptation.
The second pillar then addresses the source of the payment, which is key for neutrality, a state-guaranteed source.
This is where the constitutional genius really shines. Salaries had to be paid from the Beit al-Mal, the central treasury, not from local revenues or regional taxes.
Why is that so critical?
Because the Beit al-Mal is, in theory, the neutral repository of all state wealth managed at the highest level. By paying the judge directly from there, the judge becomes beholden to the state as an institution of justice, not to a local politician or a regional economic interest.
So if a judge in Kufa rules against a powerful local landowner, that landowner can't just pressure the local administrator to cut the judge's pay.
Exactly, because that pay comes from a central mechanism hundreds of miles away, completely beyond local political reach. It creates a firewall. The centralization of payment is a deliberate strategy to decentralize influence.
The third pillar ensures reliability, regular and guaranteed payments. This seems like basic good governance, but it's revolutionary for stability.
Stability is everything for judicial integrity. A high salary that arrives 6 months late is functionally useless. It creates anxiety and forces the judge right back into the dependency the system was designed to eliminate. The payments had to be predictable and guaranteed. This predictability lets the judge manage their household, plan for their family, and maintain the mental focus required for justice without that constant background noise of, will I get paid this month?
A worried mind can't execute impartial judgment.
It can't.
And the final pillar, which directly counters that executive leverage we talked about, independence from local authorities.
This is the political insulation. The judge's income and resources were structurally separated from the regional governor's control. While a governor might provide logistical support, like a courthouse, they could not unilaterally decide to cut a judge's pay, delay it, or threaten it.
It's a clean legal separation.
It is. The central authority funds the judge, and local authorities are mandated to respect the judge's autonomy. It's the fundamental safeguard against local political pressure.
When you put all four of those together, high pay, central funding, regularity, and political separation, the sources give this perfect summary. The state pays the judge, but cannot buy the judge.
That one phrase just encapsulates the entire philosophy. The state fulfills its obligation to sustain the institution of justice, but the moment that money reaches the judge, it's just sustenance. It's legally and ethically stripped of any implied political obligation to whoever signed the check.
Let's dig a bit deeper into that philosophy of high salary. Why not just a living wage? Why did Hazrat Umar, our RA, aim for what the sources call dignified sufficiency? What does that really mean?
Well, this moves beyond simple economics into the psychology of governance. A judge can't just survive. They have to live with a dignity that's appropriate to the immense weight of their office. If a judge is constantly worried about rent or supplies, those survival anxieties are a persistent, subtle contaminant on their judgment. Dignified sufficiency ensures the judge can focus solely on the demanding task of finding truth.
And I imagine there's a social component, too. If a judge is paid like an entry-level clerk, it's hard for them to command respect from, say, a wealthy merchant or a powerful general.
That's a huge part of it. The judge has to maintain a social standing that is above suspicion. If a judge appears desperate or is forced to economize severely, it just invites suspicion. It makes them an immediate target. Dignified sufficiency meant they could afford the necessary staff, the institutional housing, and the personal presentation that signaled credibility and authority. It was an expense dedicated to maintaining the court's authority in the public eye.
The sources also talk about the specific pressures that necessitated this level of compensation. It's more than just avoiding hunger.
Oh, absolutely. 3 specific burdens really stand out. First is the intense social pressure and public scrutiny that comes with the job. Judges operate under a microscope. Their personal life, their family, their transactions are all observed. A high salary allows them to maintain a firewall against that kind of scrutiny.
And then there are the unavoidable family needs that can be a huge distraction.
The system recognizes the judge as a human being. They have a family. If a judge is facing domestic financial stress, maybe a relative needs medical care or they need to pay for schooling, that judge's mental bandwidth is divided. Justice requires total concentration.
So the provision for the family ensures the judge's focus stays in the courtroom.
Right. A private crisis should never be allowed to trigger a public crisis in the justice system.
And the third pressure, the most critical one, facing powerful enemies when you uphold the truth.
This is the cost of courage. When a judge makes a legally correct ruling against a powerful figure, a tribal leader, a connected administrator, they invite severe retaliation. It might not be physical. It could be social isolation, economic boycotts, smear campaigns to ruin their reputation.
And a judge who is financially precarious just can't afford to make powerful enemies.
They are structurally bound to compromise. The high salary provides a robust buffer against those consequences. It's the financial muscle that allows the judge to withstand the isolation that comes from upholding impartiality. It essentially pays the judge to be fearless.
So ultimately, the focus is on the sole pursuit of truth. A low-paid judge is distracted by survival. A well-paid judge can dedicate their entire capacity to the truth.
And it's an investment in integrity that produces massive returns in legitimate governance. I mean, this principle that anti-corruption is best achieved through high compensation to remove the incentive for a bribe is the very basis of modern governance studies.
It's remarkable that this insight was implemented so many centuries before modern economic theories formalized the concept. It was just a clear-eyed systemic response to a known human vulnerability.
The salary in this context is the foundational insurance policy for the rule of law itself.
Now, we have to turn to the other side of this coin. The high salary is one part, but it has a necessary counterpart.
Yeah.
The absolute prohibition on gifts.
Yes, the sources are very clear on this. High salary alone is not enough. If you seal the front door, which is poverty, you have to simultaneously and definitively seal the back door of gratitude-based corruption.
This pairing seems to define it as a comprehensive system. You address the internal need with the salary, but you have to eliminate the external temptation with the ban. Why was the prohibition so strict, even for things labeled respect or hospitality?
Because corruption is adaptive. It's subtle. Once a judge is well paid and can't be starved out, people seeking influence just change their tactics. They shift from an overt bribe for a decision to offering gifts purely to establish a relationship.
A relationship of obligation.
Of obligation, familiarity, gratitude. A gift, even a small one, establishes a personal connection and creates a potential conflict of interest that the judge might not even recognize at first.
And that potential conflict is the issue. The moment a judge feels grateful to someone in a case, they lose the ability to apply the law impersonally.
Exactly. The strictness was a prophylactic measure. It was designed to prevent even the appearance of evil. So the definition of a gift was expanded to include anything that could remotely sway a judge's impartiality or create a perception of obligation.
The source material has this powerful analysis behind the severity, stating that a gift to a judge is not generosity. It is, unequivocally, investment.
And that insight just strips away all the social veneer. When an interested party gives a gift to a judge, they aren't motivated by altruism. They are making a calculated, small investment in future goodwill, hoping for a return.
And that investment is tiny compared to the potential return of winning a lawsuit.
Exactly. By accepting it, the judge is essentially accepting a soft liability. Umar, RA's prohibition, cuts this relationship off at the root. It maintains the judge's absolute neutrality.
It recounts of this, right? If a judge received a gift.
Yes, he often ordered the gift to be placed immediately into the Beit al-Mal, the public treasury. The judge wasn't allowed to profit from it. This visible act of rejection sent a powerful message to the public. It built confidence.
So this creates the double seal. Let's just reiterate how this closes both avenues of corruption at the same time.
The double seal is the core architecture. First, the front door of poverty and need is closed by the high state-guaranteed salary. The judge has no legitimate reason to seek outside help. Second, the back door of gratitude and soft corruption is closed by the absolute, non-negotiable prohibition of all gifts. By enforcing both, the judiciary achieves a state of maximum insulation. It becomes financially impenetrable.
And crucially, this system eliminates the need for the judge to perform these complex ethical calculations every time something is offered.
Right. Is this gift generous? Is it manipulative? Is it hospitality or an investment? By making the rule absolute, no gifts whatsoever, period, the judge is given a clear, uncompromising guideline. It ensures the standard of integrity is institutional and uniform.
Okay, so we've established financial security is the armor.
Yeah.
But armor is useless if the wearer can be arbitrarily yanked off the battlefield. Salary independence has to be married to job security.
This is the political security layer. A judge might be paid handsomely, but if the governor or even the caliph can dismiss them on a whim, the judge remains fundamentally dependent.
The fear of losing the office becomes the new leverage point.
It does. Financial security has to work in tandem with political security. A judge who fears arbitrary dismissal cannot rule freely.
So how is this addressed to secure the dignity of office? This meant treating judges not as servants, but as institutions.
Absolutely. Judges were treated as institutions of the state, not temporary employees. This required, first, security of tenure. Judges were appointed with the understanding that the office was secure, often for life, as long as they maintained good behavior and competence. That long-term view allows them to develop institutional courage.
And the dignity of office itself required a certain decorum.
It's about public signaling. The state needed to signal to everyone, the public, the litigants, the executive branch, that judicial decisions would be honored, even if they were inconvenient. The judge had to feel empowered by the legal framework, not indebted to political figures.
What about the specific protection from arbitrary removal? What was the process for dismissal?
This is a vital constitutional detail. Dismissal couldn't be based on a disagreement with a ruling or a change in political climate. It had to be based on documented misconduct, proven incompetence, or a clear ethical violation.
And who adjudicated that?
Well, while the ultimate power rested with the caliph, the process was far from arbitrary. It required a rigorous standard of proof and often relied on the advice of other senior judicial figures. The standard was clear ethical or legal failure, not political disagreement.
So this separation of powers, where the executive appoints and pays, but cannot arbitrarily fire a judge, is the final lock.
It's the final lock on judicial independence. Salary independence and job security are two indispensable sides of the same constitutional coin. You can't have one without the other and still guarantee impartiality.
Let's talk now about the societal benefits of all this, the impact on the general public, and how it pushes back against powerful interests. Public confidence is a crucial constitutional asset.
The appearance of justice is everything. If citizens suspect the courts are rigged, the entire system fails. They'll revert to tribal revenge, vigilante action, other power structures. Umar, R.A., understood that the integrity of the judge had to be visible and verifiable to the common person.
And that visibility comes from the structural insulation.
It does. When the public sees judges living comfortably, not ostentatiously, but with sufficient means, and sees them publicly refuse all gifts and show no dependence on local patrons, society draws a very powerful conclusion.
This court cannot be bought.
This court cannot be bought. And that visible independence validates every ruling, even the unpopular ones. It reinforces the idea that the rule of law is sovereign.
Now let's analyze how this stops elites from controlling courts through means other than direct bribery, what we'd now call elite capture prevention.
Elite capture is that subtle, systemic way powerful groups co-opt institutions without technically breaking the law. If direct bribery fails, the elite try to control judges through soft influence, offering social standing, networking, prestigious connections. They become the judge's patron.
And in that kind of society, patronage is a huge form of currency. If you're isolated, you're vulnerable.
Precisely. But by centralizing the salary, guaranteeing tenure, and demanding dignified sufficiency, the judge's fundamental needs, financial security, social standing, long-term stability, were all met by the state itself.
Which effectively dismantles the whole patronage structure.
It does. Judges did not need patrons because the state was their sole provider. They did not need to seek favors because their needs were met. And crucially, they did not fear isolation because their income and tenure were secured regardless of their popularity with the local elite.
So the judiciary becomes structurally resistant because the judge isn't looking outside the courtroom for validation or survival.
It creates a buffer zone around the judge, allowing them to be entirely dedicated to the law and the evidence. Their personal survival is guaranteed by the constitutional design, freeing their moral compass to seek justice impartially.
This is where the historical lesson becomes so relevant for today. This framework provides the blueprint for so many successful modern legal systems. How does this connect to modern constitutional practices?
Many principles of judicial independence in mature democracies today are direct functional replications of this exact insight. We see it in judicial pay commissions, bodies insulated from the legislature that are tasked with setting judicial pay at an appropriate level.
That insulation is key. It stops the legislature from using the budget as a weapon.
Exactly. And even more directly, you have constitutional protection against the reduction of judicial pay during a judge's term. That's written right into the U.S. Constitution and many others. It prevents the legislature from punishing a judge for an inconvenient ruling by cutting their salary.
And the strict gift prohibition has its modern mirror as well.
It absolutely does. Modern systems rely on strict conflict of interest rules that require judges to disclose financial entanglements, recuse themselves from cases, and adhere to strict rules on accepting gifts or hospitality. It formalizes the ancient concept that a judge cannot serve the law and a private patron at the same time.
It's truly remarkable how the core architecture laid out centuries ago remains the universal gold standard for institutional integrity.
It is, because the problems are perennial. Today, many legal systems struggle with the very same issues. Underpaid judges leading to desperation, pervasive corruption scandals from dependency, and overt political influence because judges lack secure tenure and income.
So if we were to distill this down, what are the powerful, concise, universal lessons from this model?
The sources give us 5 that translate directly into modern wisdom. 1. Pay judges well, high enough to remove the economic motive for compromise. 2. Pay them from a neutral treasury. Centralize the funding to remove local influence. 3. Ban gifts absolutely. Close the back door of soft corruption. 4. Protect tenure. Ensure job security so they don't fear political retaliation. And 5. Treat salary as constitutional armor, not a luxury. Recognize this is the necessary cost of impartial governance.
That is the ultimate takeaway. Justice shouldn't be expensive for the people seeking it, but he knew definitively that justice cannot be cheap for the state to maintain.
The expense is not a cost, it's the price of liberty. By insulating judges financially and politically, he engineered a system for courage without fear, integrity without hunger, and independence without isolation.
So what does this all mean? We've seen that the judiciary's strength isn't just in its legal text, but in its financial architecture. Insulating judges financially is the single most practical way to ensure they focus on the law, free from distraction and pressure.
It's a profound piece of constitutional wisdom. It demonstrates that structure is often more reliable than just relying on individual virtue. You build a system where the easiest, most logical, and most secure choice for the judge is to rule honestly.
The provocative thought we want to leave you with is this. A judge who owes nothing to anyone, neither a debt of gratitude nor a debt of survival, can decide everything honestly. This wasn't just economic policy, it was the ultimate constitutional wisdom applied to the pursuit of justice.
Financial stability, in this profound sense, becomes the servant of judicial truth.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Next time, we're moving directly to the next critical component, from Case 15, the legal appeal and review system.
We'll explore how Umar, AA, established a mechanism for correcting legal error without undermining the judge's authority or eroding public confidence. It's about building a system that allows for correction, but not for chaos.
And as you go about your week, if you're tackling complex problems in your own field governance, business, managing a team, think about the implications of this model. Where are the points of financial dependency that might be compromising integrity in your own structure?
We encourage you to seek out Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir's detailed work and delve further into this foundational legacy.
Until next time, keep seeking wisdom.